Well, everybody, welcome to tonight's Salon, hosted by the Do Good Fund in Columbus, Georgia. My name is Hallie Fivecoat. I'm the collection manager for Do Good. It's great to be able to arrange this tonight, which is a conversation will be focused on the work of Arielle Gray and her show, Honeychild, which is now up in the Do Good Gallery. We typically do these in person, which are always really nice, and we are fortunate that we have a lot of people who enjoy coming, but it's great also to do this virtually so we can share this with people who can't always be here. So anyway, welcome and thank you so much for joining. If you're new to the Do Good Fund, I'll just offer a very brief, short background. The Do Good Fund is a Columbus, Georgia-based nonprofit, which began in 2012. And the focus is to build a museum quality collection of photographs taken in the American South since World War II. Work in the collection ranges from more than 20 Guggenheim Fellows to images by lesser known and emerging photographers working in the region. And our mission is to make this collection of over 800 images accessible through regional museums, nonprofit galleries, and other venues, and to encourage community-based programming to accompany our exhibitions. So our collection is also accessible through our website, thedogoodfund.org, where you can see all of the artists and all of the work that we have in the collection. Now I'm really happy to introduce our two guests, our two speakers tonight. Allison Grant, who's going to be having a conversation with Arielle Gray. Allison is an artist, a writer, a curator, and associate professor of photography at the University of Alabama. Her artworks have been widely exhibited and are held in public collections at the Bainbridge Island Museum of Art, Birmingham Museum of Art, High Museum of Art, DePaul Art Museum, King County Portable Works Collection, and in several corporate and private collections. She has won numerous awards and grants and was named the Silver Eye Center for Photography's 2022 Silver List. Her photographs have been published in magazines, newspapers, and periodicals, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Southern Cultures, and Monthly Photography Magazine. Grant is also a curator of note in the US and abroad, and her essays have appeared in Minding Nature Journal and Insight, Journal of Experimental Media, as well as artist publications and exhibition catalogs. She is also a former professor and friend now of our other guest, Arielle Gray. Arielle Gray is a lens-based artist, an Alabama native, and a recent graduate from the Yale School of Art. The images featured in her show Honeychild are from her recent thesis exhibition. Arielle is also one of our recent 2023 recipients of the Collinsworth Award, and we are very happy to have two of her images now in our collection. Gray's work considers facets of Black life in America while exploring notions of intimacy between lovers, friends, and family. Raised by Southern Black women, she is continuously searching for connection, strength, and resilience in her subjects. Gray's been a recipient of the Aperture Creator Labs Fund, a guest writer for the Guggenheim Academic Engagement Group, and has created images for T Magazine, the New York Times, ProPublica, and the New Yorker. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to Allison and Arielle.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Do Good Fund. Thank you, Haley. Thank you, Alan. We are just so happy to be here with you all and thankful for the ways that you all make opportunity and community here in the South. It really means a lot to our community, and I'm just so excited to talk with you today, Arielle, because you are an amazing photographer and this exhibition so great. And I know there may be people on this call who haven't had a chance to see it or maybe just don't know much about your practice. And so I thought maybe you could start by just sharing a little bit about the work and maybe showing us some of the pictures as well that are in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd also like to say thank you to the Do Good Fund. Thank you, Allison. Thank you for doing this. Thank you, everybody that's here. And yeah, let me get started. I'm gonna pull it up. Let me see. Where is the screen? There we go. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see this? Allison, can people see?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, awesome. So I guess I want to start with also talking about something that Hallie mentioned, which is accessibility and how that does matter and how important that is. I grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, with my mom, my grandma, my sister. We were in a kind of like low income area, and they're like rural. I hate that word. I can't say that word. Rural areas are kind of like familiar places for me. When I got into Yale in 2021, it was kind of a culture shock. And it was one of those things where you make a big decision to go somewhere far away in hopes of having sort of like just a new experience, just a new set of ideas, a new set of challenges, a new horizon, things like that. Um, and it was one of those things that's scary. So the moment that I landed there, I moved there, I was like immediately longing for home. And I think that's where a lot of the work comes in. So um, I'm gonna like kind of flip through a little bit and kind of give a brief overview of the images, specifically portraits. But a lot of these kind of came out of those lonely areas of my life and those people that kind of weren't afraid to knock on my door, the people that I was attracted to, the people who look like me. And I think that when I've grown up with a sister so closely, it's like are women are like home for me in a way, especially Black women, and the way that we dress and express ourselves and kind of just exist and go through life. And a lot of my practice takes place within a studio space, within the southern landscape environment. And it's really all it's all intuitively driven. I think that I have a hard time sitting and researching first. I think I'm more of an image maker first, and then I hit the books later. Um, and a lot of the ways in which I kind of edited down with the images for my thesis were through like color, through palette, through the textures that I wanted to best represent myself. And I've always been attracted to softness and warmth. And so that's kind of where I landed with these works.
Thanks. I feel so much of what you're talking about. Just, I mean, I think I told you this. There's this thing about your work that I feel in these images, but I feel it in other ways in other groups of images. It's just there's like a mood or a
Yeah.
sort of warmth that wraps out around you that, I mean, these are not my spaces, these are not my
Yeah.
experiences, but I feel drawn into them in this way that emanates out so strongly from the images. I feel like I think you described them as velvety in
Yeah.
this specific instance. But there is this sort of warm honey color. I'm going to play on the title of the
On the
exhibition,
hands.
Child,
Oh,
that runs through
absolutely.
them. And then
Yeah.
other works that aren't in this show, I think also have these like sunshine yellows, but then sometimes they feel a little bit putrid, but sometimes they feel like marigolds, and sometimes they're a little green. And there's a sort of, I don't know, humidity and warmth and glow that is like so evocative of mood. That's
Yeah.
what I'll
Thank
come
you.
to your work like before anything else. And it just I want to know how you do that and how
Yeah.
you think about that and what that
Yeah.
is for you.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of been trying to wrap my brain around what it is. Even after like 2 years of grad school, it's still an ongoing question for me. I think a lot about what I grew up on. I'm obnoxiously into pop culture. So like a lot of older films, a lot of film noir, like 2 in the morning. I was in middle school, I would watch Tennessee Williams like films like all throughout the night, which I woke up with a really guilty, weird feeling because I felt like I was like Elizabeth Taylor at times. And I just feel like, oh, but like the way that those people in those films glow, the way that I wanted to see that within my own community. Oh, somebody's coming in. Oh, okay. Within my own community and within the people around me. Like I always loved the idea of play. But I've always been extremely soft and extremely like just extremely longing for softness. I think that's a big part of it, is just like that longing. And then if you don't have it at your disposal immediately, you create it or you look for it. And that can be through film, books, that could be through a description of a color, a description of a smell, fragrances, things like that. And from there, I just kind of make those observations as I go, and maybe I can come back to this spot or this like church or this place in my grandma's house or this corner where the dust collects in my grandma's house. And I find that to be beautiful. I also thought about the feeling of it when I am making the work. It's sort of like when you're about, do you know, like when you're about to fall asleep and you're not quite asleep, there's like that very fragile space between being awake and going to sleep, where the slightest sound, it feels violent, even though it could just be like your cat knocked over, like a glass of water or something. It's like it's like that. It's almost like the suspension that I'm looking for when I'm making, like in my mind, what I'm looking for in making the work is kind of like what leads me or what supports me, what drives me in that. But yeah, I thought about that this morning. So maybe it's not fully cooked, but I feel like it's definitely medium well. Like
I think that's such a powerful way of kind of talking about being in this in-between space. And one of the things I'm so interested in this work is that a lot of the pieces that are in the show at Do Good right now are about these rituals of, putting on a glove, styling your hair, posing for a portrait, these sort of preparations or like in-between moments of feminine expression of identity, but they're also, sometimes staged for the camera, and you can kind of feel that in the images. And I wondered if, thinking about the in-between space that you're trying to inhabit and your life in Alabama that was inaccessible to you, and,
yeah.
Being at Yale and trying to sort of make sense of those two spaces was a part of how all that kind of came together for you.
Yeah. I write a lot. I journal a lot, actually, more than anything. And I think that the images were sort of an extension, a way to document. And it's kind of odd. We're currently working on this book club with one of my friends. He's here. His name's Taj Reed. Hi Taj. We're like working together, and we're working on kind of like reading through these texts by different authors. Currently working on Art on My Mind by Bell Hooks, and today, before we were to meet today, I kind of went back through it, and I was looking at this conversation that Bell Hooks has with Carrie Mae Weems about her work, and there's this mention of like the document or like documenting, and oh, Holly's here, awesome. Of like documenting, uh and there's sort of like this quote that Belle has about it in regards to Carrie's work, which I'm not trying to put myself in that strata of like legendary or whatever, but I kind of resonated with this quote that Belle has about Carrie's work, where it's kind of like where she's saying, you're not looking to document in some scientific, linear, orderly, factual way where we come from or where we came from as like Black people, how we got here. She's uncovering these details, but also exploring the gaps, the spaces, and the shadows that facts don't allow us to see. Like she's exploring in the mystery. And for me, I resonated with that because a lot of those words and a lot of those meanings came up a lot in the last 2 years while I was at Yale, and I didn't quite understand. I think that with words, it's like I have these visual associations, but what I really would like to do, a goal for me, is to kind of hammer down and see through to the definition of the words. And so magic and mystery were sort of given to me as far as like descriptors of my work early on in Yale. And I think that I've been trying to kind of hammer down like what those definitions are to me in the work. And I think a lot about these these moments and these movements of like placing a wig upon your head or slipping on a glove, and how to me it is magical to me to see somebody transform, or to see somebody um apply different fabrics, different facial expressions in order to sort of become something else, um for sure. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think also the way that there is specificity in these sort of intimate or personal like moments. Like I see a parallel between Carrie Mae Weems' work and yours of just showing us something about the ordinary, but it's not only about just seeing this like normal moment of life, like taking a
Yeah.
glove on and off, or
Yeah.
styling your hair. These are like kind
Yeah.
of like even being photographed is a pretty
Yeah.
normal thing that most people do, but they take on this
Yeah.
kind of elevated or heightened type of meaning in your work, and I find that really interesting as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel sort of early on I really wish that I think I looked a lot at people like Gregory Cruz. I remember you had Twilight in your office when I was still in undergrad. And I remember seeing it and wishing that I could create something so large and so grand, and maybe that could happen one day. But for now, like kind of just using what's at my disposal, what I know and like what I'm into, and making that something in and of itself without it having to be something so much as of a like a tableau sorts of things. And kind of just remembering where I come from is a really big part of it for me as well. It was something that really kept me sane when I was in Connecticut out of my element. And I think that also part of the reason why the show is called Honeychild is because that's kind of like a term that my mom or my grandmother kind of use as a term of it, like endearment, but then like it's also kind of like almost the same as sort of like a bless your heart type of thing. Kind of like, okay, like get it together, remember where you came from, and work with what you have, sort of type of thing. And also just speaking to like I love um honey as the sort of theme and things. That's the name of my cat. That's like the color of the light. That's my favorite Mariah Carey song, like things like that. you know.
Um,
So,
I sort of thinking more about like what it was like to try to access some of that lived history of I don't know, just the thickness of the air in the South, I think about too in your work.
yeah.
And you're collaborating, I think, with people who are in New Haven. And the
Hmm.
work of yours, I know that some of the work that this grew out of, you were kind of more collaborating with your family and people in
Yeah.
your immediate community. How do
Yeah.
you work with sitters from your own community, or, well, I mean, I don't want to limit your community,
Yeah.
but from
Yeah.
Alabama
Yeah.
at Yale, how do you kind of think about that sitter photographer relationship, and,
Yeah.
what do you bring and what does the sitter bring to the equation?
Yeah. It's like a lot of things, but I think that where I kind of start with, I really generally just start with a conversation with them. I mean, I think that Alex, those photographs could not have happened if the energy between myself and Alex wasn't what it was. Alex is also an artist from Ohio, and I feel like whenever we talk, we're just like two old ladies like on a porch, like drinking tea, drinking like iced tea or sweet tea or something. And it's like kind of pulling me back to this like ancestry and these generations that have come before us, and like how we take up their mannerisms and we still have them. And so I look for those in like people who I want to work with, like uh basically like just old souls, I think. And I wasn't really as in touch with my spirituality before I got to Yale. I figure it kind of was like a guiding light to help me through the whole process. But um, I think that with the sitter, it's like have I have to kind of keep faith in that they're trusting me with this, and that I really just work from like a sense of gratitude too. I mean, I'm really uh happy when people want to spend that time with me and sit with me and be able to work with me here. And yeah, I think a lot of the family, even though they're family members, it's like I can still feel sometimes when they're like, okay, where is this going? And I'm just like, you got to be patient with me. You have to trust me. And they're like, of course I trust you, your family. But doing that with strangers, it can be, uh, it can feel like a challenge to me. But sometimes people are like when I photographed Michelle and Taylor, like whether or not she's just super experienced with this type of thing, because she is an amazing, like talented musician who has had a long history of being in the industry. or not. It's just people kind of unfold, like, and I think that in a beautiful way for me, and I can only really be grateful. I don't know how it happens sometimes. Sometimes it's just like kind of like just like hoping for the best, regardless of the outcome, just hoping for the best through and through with people. And just trying to like make them comfortable as much as I can, even though I know how images can like kind of go out into the world and they're no longer yours or whatever they say. And just hope that they trust me not to, they trust me to do right by them, I guess. Is kind of that.
Yeah, and I love that I know that's something that's really important to you in terms of how you work with others, and I just love that that's a part of your practice and how you approach image making. Um, One thing that I really love about this show and find so interesting, and I think it kind of picks up on what you were just talking about, was the way that like movement or various angles or multiplicity exists in the exhibition, right? So you've got the front of a sitter's portrait, and then you see from behind, and you've got these two images that repeat of this glove kind of like being pulled off a hand, but
Yeah.
there's a way in which they almost become like a film sequence or an animation where it feels like the action or the process of photographing is more alive inside of the multiplicity than it would be if these were just, stagnant or singular. Not, I don't mean
Yeah.
stagnant. I don't think they're stagnant
Yeah.
by themselves, but
Oh.
if they were individual images that didn't
Mhm.
have this direct relationship to each other and to multiple frames,
Yeah.
I think they would read really differently. And I was
Yeah.
so curious about that. I don't know of an instance when you've done that with your work in previous
Yeah.
installations, but I
Oh
could
yeah.
not be aware of it.
Yeah.
I
I
wondered if you
think
could talk
that,
about that.
yeah, sure. I mean, I remember this. I'm gonna have to go back to get to the answering the question, but I remember when I graduated from undergrad. It was December 2019. I applied to SFAI. It was really funny because you were like telling me like just try it, just do it to get a good feel for like how to apply to grad school, what the process looks like. I remember my interview for SFAI. I was talking to Linda Connor. I think that was her name, and she was like, it was just so interesting because I only had a year and a half of like studio art in grad school. I mean, in undergrad, and I was like in a whole other world. And when she said sequencing, she was like, "How do you sequence? Like, is that of interest to you?" And it was the first time I actually had to think about it. And I thought about it for like 5 minutes, put it away, applied to grad school again after SFAI closed, and it just dawned on me, like, it's looking at photo books, looking at a lot of documentaries around other people's work, and it's just like this sequence to me is most important because of emphasis and repetition. The motion of taking off a glove to me is sort of like, or it's like, is it taking it off or is it putting it on, in that way? And that repetition, I wanted to have some sort of thought process around that, because it is important as to like what people might feel happens before the photo is taken or after the photo is taken, what's happening in the periphery of that image. That's also kind of like sequencing and editing was sort of what kind of brought me to like the video that I have in the show uh as well, because one, because I needed a break from still images, and two, like I just wanted to see what that would look like in the pool, even though it scared me because I think that people looking at the video is scarier for me than looking at the images, because it's like the video just keeps going whether or not you want it to stop. It just keeps going because people are listening, people want to hear it, people want to know. And I remember playing, I'm gonna play it also, by the way. But I remember playing it for the first time, and we had all the lights off, and I think that was when my stomach drops, is when all the lights go off, and then the video starts, and it's like Renee Cox is in there, Collier Shore is in there, and I'm just like holding on to my, well, okay, I can't say that. I am clenching some part of me, and it's maybe all of my body, but it's definitely one part of me that I was clenching the entire time. And when the lights came back on, Greg was like, "Oh, that was good. Let's play it again." And I was like, "Oh my God," like that made it even worse. So I'm gonna, with that
We're gonna call
great
that the
introduction.
pool is the critique space at Yale for anyone who doesn't
Oh
know.
yeah,
And
sorry.
anyone who has been in an art critique knows that time does not work the same
It
way when you're
doesn't.
being
Yeah,
critiqued as it does in the
it's
actual
it's
real world.
it, it's stretched out so infinitely for me. But Allison, would it be okay if I played the video? Do you want,
Yeah.
can I do that? Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm gonna do this. I got this. Escape. Okay, let's see. All right, here we are. We're gonna make it full screen. And Allison, can you let me know if you hear it when it starts to play?
I can't hear it, Arielle. Is it supposed, but I think the sound takes a minute. And you're muted. Okay. I don't think we can hear. I think it might be because you're muted.
Oh, oops, my bad.
I'm not
Okay.
sure.
I'm gonna restart. I'm so sorry. I was like, this will be most respectful if I stay quiet. But then I'm like, well, this is my talk, so let me just do that. Here we go.
Okay, we still can't hear it. I'm not sure. I could also try
Hmm.
sharing it on my end.
Yeah, let's
Um,
try it. Let's see. I'll stop and then let's see.
Badass. All right, you can call me that, and I can go back there, but I need a shot.
You told me the other day that that never happened, but I know it happened.
Say what?
Right there. You told me, remember when I told you I said you cocked that gun, well, I said you hit Robert Pierce in the head. There was that moment, I don't know where I got that from, but it was a moment. But I never ever remember.
I never hit him in the head.
You hit him with something in that hallway. I remember that was in my room. I remember that y'all was fighting about something. Anyway,
We
that's
never had that many.
like punch. Oh, I know, that's what I'm saying. I never witnessed a lot of
His
that.
talk gave me to get, because he gave me the gun. That gun was his. He gave for my protection, and I had it up in the cabinet in the hallway.
Mhm.
And when he said whatever he said, it just didn't set straight.
You called him a bitch.
Did he call me? Well, I probably should have pulled that trigger, or back in that time, I could have pulled the trigger. But anyhow, I didn't know how to uncock it, so I went on the porch and God, it's good to me. That was 357 Magnum with the steel bullets. All of them, thank you. And that ceiling, and that part is, that hole is still in the ceiling, where it went off after I opened that screen door. Man. I'm glad those moments are not there again, and I knew that was time to get rid of that crap. Yeah, I mean, I felt that, I ain't gonna let nobody just get away with it, you know?
Yay. But yeah, that was something like, I mean, I think I can talk about like showing that in the space all day. I think I can talk about my stomach being upset the entire time and feedback or whatever. But I think that where that all came from was also thank you, Allison, for doing that because Zoom is not my thing. But I think a lot about the way that my mom and my grandmother kind of taught us how to speak and how without whether they were aware of it or not, how language functions and how memory and storytelling were a really big part of growing up for me. And I think that it's a really big part in forming the way that I think about what I'm interested in as an artist. And I really was super enamored by how memory functions for the women in my family and how their experiences are similar in a way, but then they have like these differences of recollecting. And I had been recording those on my phone, and that's why the audio is what it is, and I love it for that. It's from my phone, from 2020, where I felt this urgent sense of like of just saving and like packing things, archiving things for whatever could come after what was happening in 2020, what was going to happen afterwards. I had this great anxiety um for not wanting to forget. I think forgetting something is something that scares me a lot. And I actually, funny enough, I recorded them and I put them away. And then 2 years later, or I guess maybe 3 years later, in 2023, I just was like looking through my phone, and I recovered them. I rediscovered them almost, and it made everything that I had been working towards in the last 2 years kind of come together for me. And not just the fact of being, quote, tired of like still images, it was the very idea that I've been making these still images, and I would like to add my own, almost like my own like soundtrack, my own element of sound to my work. And I tried so hard to do like monologues. I tried to write something for myself, and I really felt it was what I was really getting at was best told in my mom's voice and in my grandmother's voice. And then the footage was sort of collected from a visit that I had back in December 2022. So I was really trying to make these portraits, but instead all I could do was just switch from still to movie, like on my camera. And that was what felt the best for those situations. And the black and white sort of functioned sort of as, I don't know, as a way to keep it cohesive, but then also to sort of eliminate this, in a way, eliminate a sense of time while it is a timed piece, you know?
No, I feel that so profoundly. And I think one of the things that's so impactful about this piece is that the story is like the audio is quite dramatic,
Mhm.
but the still footage is not very dramatic. Like
Right.
it's very still and
Yeah.
quiet, and you
Yeah.
don't really know who the characters are, and you see different members of your family just
Mhm.
still, and it almost feels like they're listening and I'm listening as
Yes.
a viewer and I'm in your space. And I can think of moments in my childhood when tension would be in the home, and
Yeah.
I mean my parents are very peaceful, but but when there's a conversation that is a little bit tense happening, and as a kid you just sort of like freeze and like
Yeah.
think backwards and listen. And
Right.
and even though the people represented aren't children, I think there's a way in which you're trying to put together who these people you're looking at are and how they're listening and why they're listening and how they're involved in
Yeah.
relationship to this really dramatic story. And even the blank spots, like the black,
Yeah.
is so powerful, so much more powerful than if it was filled with information or imagery.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
so, were you thinking about all that when you were putting it together? And how did you kind of edit and sequence everything?
Yeah. I feel like when I was thinking about the images, when I was thinking about these kind of like cuts, it was a lot to do with kind of like this reflective space. And I kind of going back to what we were talking about with like people who were sitting for me. It was sort of like a way to kind of study them without going super fast. I mean, I know you can take the image, put it into Photoshop, Camera Raw, zoom in, look at that in that type of detail. But for me, I was really drawn to the details that you can't quite snap like with the camera as often as you could, like, somebody's nose twitching or their eyelashes in the way that they set. It's something that a type of direction that's so specific that can sometimes be difficult to capture in like one specific image. Um, and so yeah, I thought a lot about where I wanted to start with it, and I wanted to start with my sister, as somebody who kind of, I mean, she is her own person, but in a way, she's sort of she is an extension of me, and I feel like she and I have both sat together and listened to these stories growing up. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned children, because it's kind of like, as kids, we heard that story so many times growing up. And I think that when I, even now, still sometimes, like, listening to these family stories, these almost mythologies, which I know that they actually happened, but in a way they're kind of more grand because I wasn't there. It was in the 60s or 70s, and these people seem larger than life to me in a way. And it's interesting though how as I get bigger, as I get older, it's like these people become more like one to one, like they are my size, and they're like, but at the same time, those memories of sitting there, it's like, no, they're so much bigger. I think about the animated Hercules where they're like on Mount Olympus or whatever, and that's how they seem to me. And like, who are these people and where are they now? And I'm like, oh wait, that's your grandma. She's right here. She's the one that goes to Bible study on Zoom every like Wednesday. Like, she's not the one with the 57 Magnum, but she is, but she is, and like having to cement those stories is so important to me that when I was thinking about the editing and the sequencing, I thought again, like back about my sister, but then my grandma is just so graceful that sometimes when I hear that story, I used to think, wow, I couldn't expect that. But then I think about women and I think about Black women and our experiences, and that's speaking kind of how multifaceted, multidimensional, how we have like these layers, everybody, but especially with my grandma, it's like she's a layered person. She is gentle, she is sweet, she's a smart ass. She and I are both smart asses. We both like can go for days arguing with each other, and she'll tell me I have the smartest mouth and I tell her I get it from her. And but she's so sweet and she's sitting there and she's so collected. And my mom is also like that. And when she doesn't think she looks great, it's still like something for me to observe, because it's like she has put us together, she puts herself together. My grandma's done the same, like, generation to generation. And I guess I kind of just wanted to have those sequences edited in a way that was allowing me to look from who was kind of just like closest in my proximity, my sister, to who's like further out of the generational line, I guess. Like, it's like mom, grandma, and then goes back to mom, like goes back to mom, and then grandma's house back to mom, like, kind of. But yeah, that was the way I was thinking about it. And this happened like the day before crit. It was very very scary for me, because I was like, why is this happening to me now? Why is this idea happening to me now? I don't want this to happen right now, because then that means I have to take everything I just printed off the wall and pull down the projector, and it's just gonna have to be that, because this is something that I do seek feedback. I did see feedback on. I sought it. I wanted it. I wanted to be scared, and I wanted to scare myself and like get into something that I hadn't touched before or shown publicly.
I admire that so much. And all of what you're saying is just making me think my poor students have to listen to me say this all the time. But I'm like, Alabama has the best light. Alabama is
Yeah,
the
it
best
does. It does.
photographer.
They should
There
listen.
are
It does.
it's I mean, like, y'all are lucky I don't cancel class. And I also think that there are so many stories that are, haven't been told in contemporary art that are right at people's fingertips, my students' fingertips when they're here. And I saw you start with that and just explode it outward. And I feel like this is such a good example, but it also makes me wonder, like, how like different communities or people or even your family sort of experience the work as you have shown it. Like, do you feel like some people just feel right at home when they walk into the gallery or see this piece, and other people it's like an opportunity for discovery of a life that they've never actually lived?
Yeah. I mean, I hope that it could be sort of something new for people who have not been used to that life, or at least give this sort of I don't know. I'm not really looking to explain. I guess like when people haven't seen it before and they kind of feel like this sort of new, or not new, but maybe somewhat, to maybe for their viewing, like this unobserved part of the American South that they don't see a lot. I want them to be able to look into it and wonder. I'm not trying necessarily to explain it to them and hold hands, but I want them to look at it and I want them to immerse themselves in it and to wonder what that's like, and from there kind of educate themselves on it. But I do feel like with my family looking at the work, it's interesting because the whole process is just, it's like I mean my sister and I, we look alike, but when I photograph her, it's almost like, I mean, she is her own person, but at the same time she's wow, her cat's on the she's her own person, but she's always kind of just sort of chill about everything. And I'm just like, wow, that's amazing. Like we have similar eyes, we have a similar color, but it's like that's not me, that's her. And like she's, I don't know. My mom's always just like, just make sure that I look okay. Just make sure. And can you put it in black and white? She likes black and white for some reason. My mom always, she used to dress us up and kind of just like make us go around the hill that we lived on and like take photos of us walking up the hill. Our hair would be like blown out and we'd wear like the matching dresses. And that was also my first brush with like photo, really. And I don't know, it's interesting. My grandma doesn't really mind. I don't think she's really, not like she doesn't care, but it doesn't seem like she's super, I don't know what the word is. She's not like she doesn't feel freakish. She's just more like, okay, so long as like they know that I'm your grandma and like they know I'm crazy about you. Like that was something she said in one of the recordings, and I thought that that was the sweetest thing because it's like no matter, hopefully, I mean, I hope the work goes many places, but like no matter where the work goes, it's like I will always have those people like that home and like that central point at which I come from and like everything about me comes from and is influenced by at the root of it all. They yeah, I don't know, my sister hasn't seen my work in person on the wall yet. My mom hasn't either. I'm about to put them all in the car and we're gonna come to Columbus.
Yes.
See what they have to say. Film it.
Well, I want to ask you one last question before we open
Yeah.
up to the audience to see if anybody has any comments or questions out there.
Yeah.
So you just moved back to Tennessee, and I'm just curious about moving back to the South and what you are looking forward to or working on next.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so wonderful to be back in the South. I mean, I feel like I feel like I can come down a bit, like I can kind of loosen up a little bit more now that I'm back here. And with that loosening up, just beautiful chaos ensues. Like the first night me and my sister were here, we found like we were meeting so many people at this bar one night, and I look on the floor, there's a $5 bill, and we open it up later. There's like $30 of cocaine in it. We're like, whoa, this is the South. We're back. We are back. Like we are back. Like the chaos, the beautiful like looseness of the South. I am trying to relax myself and lean into it. I'm looking forward to going to Alabama and feeling that type of heat. I feel like I was talking to you and Hallie about this earlier, where the heat here, it just really touches you in a different way than it did for me in Connecticut. My skin actually starts to burn and I'm like, yes, this is like how I know I'm alive. And it really kind of gears me up for like what's coming next. And what's coming next is kind of just like more work around my family and like being here and the people that kind of make the South what it is, and Alabama specifically. Like I want to go and go back to Hill County. That's where I grew up. You know, I grew up in the same place where I was watching Ramel Ross's documentary and I was just like, whoa, whoa. And it came to me at the right point. I was at home on my couch in Connecticut and I had the toughest day and I saw the street upon which he's driving up the street or something like that. And the people in the on the street are just like waving or whatever. And I almost wanted to say hello, like out loud, like, hi, like, oh my God, I missed this. You know, it was so weird, so cringy, but like I really want to see that and through my own lens, my own way, because that's where I grew up. And like from adolescence until now, I wanna kind of write like love letters to it now that I'm back, you know.
Oh,
So
I
we'll
love that.
see.
And I just want you to know that I show your work to my students often, and there will always be a student in the class who has that same feeling about your work that you had about Ramel Ross's.
Oh my
And it's
God.
just such a special, warm, amazing thing. And I'm just so
you.
thankful to have it to share with them.
Thank you. I'm
So
happy to hear that. Oh, go ahead.
oh no, I just wanted to give everybody who's here with us an opportunity to chime in with any questions or thoughts. I think we have a chat window, and you can also just turn your camera on and unmute and ask any questions that you might have as well. I have a couple more, so I can always keep
Okay.
going,
Yeah,
but I'd love to hear
absolutely.
from everybody else too.
Yeah. Nurture function. Okay. Oh, good question, Taj. Thank you. Can you talk
Can you
about how
read the question
nurture?
real quick?
Yeah,
Just because I know we're recording.
yeah. Can you talk about how nurture functions in your practice? So I think that nurture is definitely almost like inherent to sort of like, hmm, it's kind of just inherent to like touches like that I have longed for, thought about. My mom and my grandma were and are always there. It's like their hands are always like around my shoulders when I've had like some of the most scary, vulnerable, uncomfortable moments of my life. My cat. Nope. Sorry. But yeah, I think about sort of like it's kind of new to me sometimes that the way in which I grew up with my mom and my grandmother, I can be grateful that they were always there to sort of like encourage me and my sister in different ways, but especially when it came to the work of like observing, archiving, things like that, where I expected them to be skeptical, they were nurturing and they were um, fully able to embrace what I was doing, though not understanding it. And I feel like that um along like I feel like under in this umbrella of like terms, like love is like the umbrella and nurturing is like in it for me, like care is underneath that umbrella for me. And I feel like I sort of never understood how in at Yale people were always like, you're so vulnerable, da da da, you talk about yourself in this way that I'm not comfortable talking about myself in a public way. And I always kind of just was super surprised by that because this is just naturally how I function through life. Like I am not the biggest crier when it comes to movies, but like I will put I love hugs. And I love hugs and I love being able to wrap my arms around people in a way that's comforting. And I think that that's sort of at the back of my mind when I'm making the work or when I'm looking at my images is how can I reach people in a way without yeah, how can I reach people in that way and how can I spread that love? Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Oh, oh, thank you. Thank you for this, Emma. Let's see. Can you offer some insight as to how you think about and work with color and black and white in your still images? Okay, good question. I think a lot of the time about with the color work, it came from sort of where I think a lot of people's foundation can come from, and that's like photo albums. I used to be all in my grandmother's like cabinet. Like I pull out all of the volumes of like wedding albums, photo albums from when they were in California, photo albums from when they got to Alabama, reunions, things like that. And I think I was always drawn to the image, obviously, but then there's like this yellowing that happens to some images over time that I was always really drawn to, but never able to quite verbalize it until I think it was like my finals. I was in my first year of grad school. It was final reviews. I put all the images on the wall. I turn around and I'm just like the lighting in the pool is also very like neutral. So when it goes on the wall, everything jumps out. And so I look and I turn around and I'm like, oh my God, everything is like super warm and super yellow. And I'm like, I'm down. I love it. Like, um, and that only really can happen when the images themselves kind of contain this like, kind of like this like this sort of energy within themselves, like where it doesn't matter if these colors don't go together. The thing that unifies them is sort of like the temperature of the South or the atmosphere, that I I feel, not maybe that I always see, but that I feel when I recall memories. There's like a nostalgia associated with the color. But sometimes when the nostalgia and like the color are not quite where I want them to be, where I want to kind of eliminate, where I sometimes I have to like kind of eliminate that, because I feel like there's something more that I want to focus on, like figuratively within the images. That's when I kind of turn to black and white, where I think, sorry, trying to find it. There's an image that I have of my sister and my mom that I can pull up, but I think I can also just pull up the crown image as an example as well. Let's see. Whereas like images such as like the cross or the crown, but I'm gonna say the crown one in particular, um, it's like you have the option to put it into color, but it really felt sort of unnecessary because what I want people to be focusing on is the shape of the curls or the waves and the patterns and like the pieces, like the slight like texture coming off of like the crown of the hair and sort of like the way that the light is touching these clips. And that felt more pressing to me than if I had it in color, where even, I mean, if I can share this, I'm not really ashamed of it, where it's like the light from the window here on the right side was more warm than the shadowy bits on the left where it was more blue. And even though that was something that I could have fixed in post, I'd really rather have focused on like the form and like the shape and the structure. Like what's more important to me at that time was the elements that are the physical elements in the photo rather than the sort of feeling of the color and what that can bring to this, I think. But yeah. Where did that chat go? Okay. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Do we have any other questions out there? Arielle, I have another question. Because I feel like nostalgia, you kind of touched on it a little bit, and I mean nostalgia in the best way as a sort of like reprocessing or like a need for the comfort of home and a sort of like, and I think you don't present home to be a perfect thing either. And so I think
Right.
nostalgia suggests a sort of projection of, you
Like
know,
everything being like
everything
perfect,
perfect
but
or like
yeah,
a sort of false, like a reality that nobody actually has. And I don't mean it that way, but I do think that there's a certain way that both the color in your work and the objects in your work and the tactility of your work all have this relationship to something that one might call nostalgia. And
Yeah.
I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit, and also about tactility, which I think is a part
Yeah.
of that. I mean, it makes it feel more real to me than just kind of a look into the past, you know?
Yeah. I think a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of my like fear of forgetting comes with like erasure and things not being able to be fully sort of like recalled. And I was thinking about the shape, my viewing in my mind and like how I view memory and like what does memory look like, and very like literally memory to me is very soft and it's not fully formed for me. It's like these great big shapes. It's almost as if you need glasses, you take off your glasses, everything's blobs. But like, you know, words, phrases, sounds, smells, people, they all become softer to me. And that kind of bleeds a little bit into like my tactile like sensibilities, like what I reach for and that as far as that goes. And just kind of having to remember that sometimes why things are softened is because sometimes the sharpness can be biting, you know, and sometimes to kind of peel at it bit by bit, to kind of start with softer and work your way up, is a good way for me to kind of coax myself into being fully honest with myself and kind of doing that, kind of trying to do right by myself and the viewer, you know, so as not to just like mislead anybody, to have them think that just because it's beautiful that it does not contain like these layers of tension within the work.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that your editing process is an important has an important role in all of that too.
Yeah. Um, as far as like what to pick or what
Well, yeah,
images are
because
the
I think especially when you create portraiture, like you're often taking like a whole bunch of pictures and each one has a subtle difference. And sometimes there are multiple pictures that are really good, but they communicate differently and you need different things at different moments when you're putting your work together.
yeah.
And I find that like that has a role in the selection process, just like kind of where it lands and what I need.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, with the portraits of I keep going back to them, but like these same portraits of Alex, it's purple backdrop portraits. I mean, we had like maybe 4 or 5 different wigs. Like I had like this 40-inch straight middle part wig that I wore on my birthday only one time, and I was like, oh, maybe she could wear this. She's like 5 foot, and so it's like all the way down to her calves almost, and I'm 5'10", so I was whatever. But like she, it's like those wigs. It's like there was this blonde afro wig. There were just different options that day that we were both willing to play with, and I think that it's sort of like you're enjoying the process of making these portraits, people who are willing to kind of come in and look at the array of like different options that I like pick from like thrift stores or from like beauty supply stores, who are willing to kind of play with me there. It's all fun, but what feels right, and it's almost like a bodily response, like the waxiness, the wiriness of the brown wig that we chose. It's just sort of like I can't verbalize it quite yet, but it's sort of like it just there's like a response here and here where I get excited and I'm just like, this is the one. This one makes me think of um me and when my sister and I bought a dollar VHS tape of Grease from the Dollar General. This one makes me think of that, but then it's also like recalling like 60s culture. Like I was thinking about Lorna Simpson and Flip Side in the Aftermath, like that one that what's the word? The two image diptych. The diptych, the diptych where she's got this woman who's turned away from the camera, and there's that power in not having to look, that choice almost, that or not even choice, but that decision to not look. But then you've got this backside of this like African mask, and like what does that mean when you put those two images together in that context? And I thought, in hindsight, after I made the images with Alex, like, you know, you've got many like she's there's someone she's smiling, there's someone she's kind of smirking, and the one that really worked for me is like her most natural expression, and that's how she wears her face. She's got a lot going on, like mentally, like thinking about things. She's very smart, but sometimes it's like when you catch her thinking, her face is just very stoic. It's very it's without even trying, it's very well placed. She's sort of got like this sort of like you're looking, but like, be careful in her eyes. And I really wanted that with that image. And then with the top of the bump, I wanted to put them together because it's like they're for a lot of my sitters, like I want them to feel that sort of freedom in you can look or you can turn away if you want. Um, and I feel like for uh Black photographers, for Black subjects, it's like that is an important choice, especially given the history of African Americans within this country, and like how we documented or how documentation has been done in the past, like, whether that's with or against consent. And yeah, that's kind of what that kind of made the decision for me, sort of like that gaze that she has.
Wow, that's a really powerful comment, and it maybe is a good place to end.
Yeah.
Uh, Hallie, I don't know if you want to jump back on or if we should just say goodbye. Well, thank you all so much, Arielle. Oh, there you are. Hi.
Wow, that went by so fast, but great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for asking questions. Thank you for giving me the space and opportunity to have a really full circle moment like with Allison. That was a but full circle, you know, and allowing me some time and space to like kind of just share what I love with you all. Thank
Well,
you.
we're so happy to have the work here. And again, for those of you who may not get a chance to see it in person, we've got the exhibition, you know, virtually up on our website. So you should be able to find it there, the dogoodfund.org. All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you all.
Bye, y'all.
All right.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.